It's really interesting, isn't it, to see, all these different figures, how they're engaging with like the crypto world.
Yeah.
And, Trump's been, I mean, he's been making some moves recently
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
crypto space. So we've got a really fascinating article, Trump's crypto empire set to expand, and
Right.
it lays out some pretty big new ventures, right?
Yep. This is definitely not a small thing. This is um he seems to be substantially kind of going deeper into the cryptocurrency world, and we're going to focus on two key developments. The announcement of a new stablecoin called USD1, and the plans for new investment funds in partnership with Crypto.com. So for everyone listening, really what we're going to try to do is understand what these initiatives are all about and what their potential impact could be.
So let's start by unpacking that first big piece of news, the stablecoin USD1. The article highlights that it's being launched by a company called World Liberty Financial. And here's where it gets interesting. Trump is named as a co-founder alongside Zach and Steve Witkoff. Now, for anyone who might be tuning in who's not, super familiar with crypto, can you kind of break down what a stablecoin is and why this announcement is, so significant?
Sure, yeah. So at its core, a stablecoin is a type of cryptocurrency that's designed to maintain a relatively stable value, right, compared to a traditional currency or asset. In this case, it would be the US dollar.
So it's like a digital form of the dollar.
Exactly, aiming for a one-to-one peg.
Okay.
So unlike, Bitcoin or Ethereum,
Hmm.
which are known for their price fluctuations, the idea with a stablecoin is that it should stay pretty much consistent,
Hmm.
right? Which makes it, potentially useful for everyday transactions
Mhm.
and as a reliable store of value within, the whole digital asset ecosystem.
Hmm.
What's really noteworthy about USD1 is its stated target audience.
Mhm.
Zach Witkoff specifically mentioned it being intended for sovereign investors and major institutions for secure cross-border transactions. So that suggests that, at least initially, the focus is on large-scale institutional adoption, right?
Got it.
Rather than, everyday retail use.
Right. Okay. So that's an important point to consider. It's not necessarily, aimed at the average crypto person, at least initially. And the article also mentions that this announcement comes at a time when there's this push in Congress with White House support towards stablecoin legislation. How might those two things be kind of connected?
It's really interesting, the timing, right? Because it definitely suggests a strategic alignment. If clear regulations for stablecoins are coming, right?
Yeah.
A venture like USD1, with the backing of such prominent figures, could be well positioned to take advantage of a more regulated and potentially more widely accepted environment.
Right.
Because, regulatory clarity tends to reduce uncertainty and encourage broader adoption, especially by these big institutions.
Yeah.
So essentially, World Liberty Financial seems to be anticipating and maybe even trying to influence how the regulatory landscape for stablecoins in the U.S. is going to evolve.
Okay. Now, there's one detail in the article that really stood out to me. It says that a Trump-owned company has the right to receive 75% of the net protocol revenues from World Liberty Financial after expenses.
Right.
Now, that's a huge financial stake.
Yep.
What does that tell us about the potential, like, personal financial benefits for Trump in all of this?
This is really crucial for understanding the potential incentives at play. A 75% share of the net protocol revenues could translate into massive financial gains for Trump, right? If USD1 is widely adopted and there's a large volume of transactions,
Right.
so it directly links his financial interest to the success of this stablecoin.
Yeah.
Now, if USD1 does become, this commonly used stablecoin, especially for these big institutional cross-border transactions, those revenues, I mean, they could be huge.
Yeah, yeah. And, just that level of financial involvement, of a former president directly involved in this relatively new, financial technology, that's something.
Yeah, it's definitely noteworthy, and it raises some interesting questions about, potential alignments of interest and all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's 75%. That's on the revenue from transaction fees, right?
Exactly. Net protocol revenues likely means the fees generated by transactions and activities on that USD1 network once they've covered their operational costs.
Okay. All right. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the other big announcement. Those investment funds through the partnership between Trump Media and Technology Group Corp, so TMTG, which is the parent company of Truth Social, and Crypto.com.
Right.
What can you tell us about this?
The main point of this announcement is the plan to launch these exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, later this year. Basically, these are going to be available for investors to buy shares that represent a collection of assets. Now, what's really interesting here is the dual focus. According to TMTG's announcement, these funds are going to have a unique ETF basket of cryptocurrencies and securities with a Made in America focus, spanning lots of different industries like energy.
Okay.
And the way these ETFs would work is similar to traditional ETFs. It lets investors get exposure to this diversified set of assets, but through a single investment product.
So you're saying it's not just about crypto, it's combining digital assets with like a more traditional kind of investment theme.
Right, exactly. That's a really notable blend.
So what's the thinking behind that? Why pair those two things together?
Well, there could be several reasons for that. First, it it widens the pool of potential investors,
Uh-huh.
right? It appeals to those interested in either crypto or that Made in America investment approach,
Yeah.
or maybe even both.
Right.
So it could be a way to pull in capital from different parts of the market.
Okay.
Second, it provides diversification, even within that one investment product.
Yeah.
Because by including both crypto and traditional securities, these ETFs could potentially offer, a more balanced risk profile,
Right.
although the actual assets they choose will obviously have a big impact on that.
Of course. Mm.
And third, that whole Made in America angle, it aligns with a pretty strong political and economic theme.
Yeah.
One that's often associated with Trump.
Of course.
So it could really resonate with his base and even a wider audience that's, interested in domestic industries.
Right. So this kind of unusual combination, it might be a way to attract investors with different, risk appetites, different kind of ideological leanings.
Absolutely, yeah. And it could even signal an attempt to bridge that gap between, the traditional financial world and the booming crypto market.
And all under this familiar political, banner. Okay. Now, the article points out that while Trump doesn't have this like day-to-day management role at TMTG, he is the majority owner and the largest shareholder.
Right.
So he's not making, operational decisions, but he's definitely got a huge stake in the company's success, which I guess explains why this all falls under his crypto empire.
Right.
And it looks like the market liked this news, right? TMTG's stock price jumped up.
Right.
What does that say about how investors feel about it?
That increase in stock price, it often reflects, that immediate market reaction to news.
Yeah.
In this case, it suggests that investors see this partnership with Crypto.com and the plan to launch these ETFs as a good thing for TMTG.
Okay.
It could mean they're optimistic about the potential for these new ventures to be profitable, about the brand recognition associated with both TMTG and Trump, and just the growing interest in crypto-related investments.
Right.
But while that initial stock jump is, is positive, it's important to remember that the market's assessment, it can change quickly,
Of course. Yeah.
especially with new ventures that are more speculative.
Right. Okay. Let's step back for a second and look at the bigger picture here. The article talks about Trump's, kind of changing stance on cryptocurrency. It highlights how he's gone from being skeptical to now being, a pretty big advocate. He's even said he wants to make the U.S. the world capital for cryptocurrencies.
It is.
That's quite a shift.
It's a big shift. Initially, like many in traditional finance, he expressed some doubts about cryptocurrencies, but as the industry has grown, gained wider acceptance,
Mhm.
and probably as he's realized the potential, both political and financial,
Yeah.
his position has clearly changed.
Uh-huh.
That statement about making the U.S. a world capital for crypto suggests a more supportive and potentially regulation-forward approach,
Right.
which could be seen as pretty appealing to the cryptocurrency industry.
Absolutely. So this shift, I mean, this could have big policy implications, right? If you were to,
For sure.
if you were to win again.
Absolutely, yeah. Potentially leading to a more favorable regulatory environment for the crypto industry, or at least parts of it,
Yeah.
which could speed up adoption, but it also raises questions about, potential favoritism or unintended consequences.
Of course.
It's a complex landscape.
Right, absolutely. And the article also mentions reports of, the crypto industry spending a lot of money to support Trump's election efforts.
Right.
Do you think there's a direct link between that financial support and his, his current pro-crypto stance?
Well, it's always tough to prove a direct cause and effect.
Yeah.
Right. But those reports of substantial financial support from the crypto industry for his campaign, I mean, it definitely suggests some kind of shared interest there.
Right.
So it's definitely plausible that this financial backing has had some influence on his current rhetoric and how he leans towards the sector. I mean, it's common for industries to support candidates who they think will benefit their growth and help them achieve their goals.
Right. Right. Okay. Now, the article brings up this important point about a pre-office ethics agreement.
Right.
It says that this agreement prevents Trump from making day-to-day decisions in his companies and limits the financial information he gets.
Uh-huh.
But, and this is key, it doesn't bar him from promoting his crypto-related products.
Right.
That seems like a pretty big deal.
It is a significant distinction.
Yeah.
The idea behind the agreement is to reduce those direct conflicts of interest between his official duties and his businesses.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's still allowed to promote his ventures means he can use, his public platform
Yeah.
and his influence to help those crypto-related projects, including USD1 and potentially those TMTG ETFs, without actually running them day to day.
It's a tricky situation, isn't it?
It is. It really highlights the challenges of trying to apply, these traditional ethics rules to this rapidly evolving world of digital assets.
Yeah.
And the influence of public figures.
And we've got a specific example in the article, his promotion of his meme coin on Truth Social,
Right.
where he posted, "I love Trump, so cool, the greatest of them all."
Right.
And the article points out that this caused a jump in the coin's price, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
I mean, that just shows the power of his endorsements, even within the limits of this ethics agreement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even something as, seemingly casual as a social media post from someone with his level of influence can have a real impact on the market, especially when it comes to meme coins, which are, incredibly speculative.
Right.
This really underscores how, his endorsements have the potential to drive interest and investment in his ventures, which, whether directly or indirectly, could benefit his finances.
And it's not just the stablecoin and the ETFs, right?
No, it's not.
The article mentions other crypto-related things he's endorsed, like his own meme coin, which, it went up initially and then went down, which is pretty typical for those kinds of assets.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
And then there are these online stores selling crypto president watches for, get this, $100,000 each.
Wow.
So it seems like he's getting involved in different aspects of the crypto world.
He is. His involvement spans a range of crypto offerings, from that more institutionally focused stablecoin
Right.
to the highly speculative meme coins and even, novelty items.
Yeah.
This multifaceted approach suggests a strategy to, capitalize on the growing interest in digital assets, but across different segments of the market.
Yeah.
Like that $100,000 crypto president watch, that's definitely targeted at a very specific group, right?
Yeah.
Like hardcore supporters and crypto enthusiasts who are willing to pay a premium for those unique branded items.
So just to kind of wrap up, it's pretty clear that Trump's involvement in the crypto world is getting bigger, with this new stablecoin USD1 aimed at institutional users, and then the ETFs, which will combine crypto with those more traditional made-in-America stocks.
Exactly. These developments mark a significant increase in his engagement with the digital asset space. The stablecoin venture, that targets a potentially very lucrative institutional market, while the ETFs aim to draw in a wider investor base by blending crypto with that more familiar investment strategy. But do you think there's any kind of overlap or connection between these two separate initiatives, like within his broader crypto strategy? For example, could the success of USD1 actually benefit TMTG, or the other way around?
That's an interesting question. It's possible, right? Like if institutions really adopt USD1, that could indirectly benefit the overall crypto market,
Yeah.
which could then increase interest in the types of crypto assets that might end up in those TMTG ETFs, and the other way around, right? The ETF, by just being visible,
Right.
they could raise awareness about digital assets in general,
Right, exactly.
which could then lead to more people using stable coins like USD1.
It's kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like, they could function kind of independently, but still contribute to this broader ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a plausible outcome.
Yeah.
That increased attention and potential legitimacy brought to the crypto space by these high-profile ventures, it could create that kind of ripple effect.
Yeah. And these moves, I mean, they could be huge, not just for, cryptocurrency itself, but also for Trump's personal wealth.
Absolutely. If USD1 takes off and those new ETFs get adopted, the financial implications for him could be significant. Plus, his continued involvement in the crypto world, that's going to influence how the public sees it and the whole conversation around digital assets and their place in the future of finance.
It all leads to this pretty big question, doesn't it? With politics and digital assets getting so intertwined, what does this all mean for the future of finance and how it's regulated? It really makes you think about how this kind of involvement from someone like Trump might shape, public trust and how digital currencies evolve moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something for all of us to keep in mind,
Yeah, something to think about.
for sure.
It's a fascinating time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's changing so quickly.
It's evolving rapidly, and it's really hard to predict where it's all going to go.
Right.
But it's definitely exciting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.